Hello everyone, welcome to CAP 2026, the current affairs battle. Okay, so today we are going to discuss about the private members bill. So it's one of the important topic in Indian polity. So let us try to understand why private members bill came in the news. So basically the number of private members bill introduced in the parliament is actually getting reduced. Okay, or we can say that it is actually decreasing day by day. So let us try to understand the reasons behind it, and we will also understand about what is this private members bill. A member of parliament who is not a minister, very important. So this private member is not a minister, but that person should be a member of parliament. Okay, whether elected or nominated, so no problem, both elected and nominated members can be a private member. He is referred to as a private member, and any bill introduced by such a member is known as the private members bill. Very important, PMB, that is private members bill. That means any person who introduces a bill, who is a member of the parliament, but he or she is not a minister, can be termed as a private member bill. So the sole responsibility for drafting this bill lies with the member who proposes it. So whoever is actually proposing the bill, and that person is having the complete responsibility for drafting this bill. You know that that's a humongous task, drafting a bill which needs lot of research. Okay, a lot of research, statistics, all these things are actually important, and that is a strenuous job, and that job, the whole job, should be done by the member himself or herself. Then what about this mechanism, how it is actually working in the parliament? A private member's bill can be introduced only after giving a 1 month notice. Okay, so 1 month notice should be given before introducing this bill in the parliament, and 1 month notice is mandatory. And one more thing is important, that is obtaining the permission from the speaker. Okay, so if it is in the case of Lok Sabha, that is a speaker, and if it is in the case of Rajya Sabha, that's the chairman. Okay, so 1 month notice, also getting a permission from the speaker or the chairman. And if that bill is actually selected, okay, suppose it is actually selected for the discussion, then what will happen? So in the Lok Sabha, they reserve last 2.5 hours of its sitting every Friday for the discussion and consideration of private members bill. So every Friday, when when is it in session, when the house is in session, every Friday, last 2.5 hours is actually dedicated for the presentation and consideration and discussion of the private members bill. And in the case of Rajya Sabha, they have dedicated 2.5 hours, that is 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. on every alternate Friday for the same purpose. So for the discussion and also for the consideration, they have allocated 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. on every alternate Friday. So that is the mechanism. And in history, there are many private members bill were introduced in the parliament, and the first private members bill ever passed was the Muslim Waqf bill. It was in the year 1952, and which was introduced by Zaid Muhammad Ahmad Kasmi. Okay, Zaid Muhammad Ahmad Kasmi, he was the person who introduced the bill. That was the first private members bill which was actually passed in the parliament. That was in the year 1952. So I hope that part is clear about what is a private member bill, who is a private member. I hope you understood that very clearly. Okay, so it's very important to understand about it, because in Indian polity, when we are looking at the lawmaking process in our constitution, no, parliament, the lawmaking process in the parliament, which is in Rajya Sabha, which is in Lok Sabha, everything is important, and such kind of a lawmaking process is this one, that is a private members bill, because you know that it is actually introduced as a bill, and when it is coming out with the permission of both the houses and with the assent of the president, then it is termed as an act. Okay, so this is a private members bill. Now let us try to understand the significance of a private members bill and how it is actually beneficial in a democratic process. Let's understand that. One thing is policy innovation, very important, policy innovation. So how can it be a part of the policy innovation? How can you say that the private members bill is actually coming up with some innovation? The private members bill enabled the MPs to introduce fresh ideas and address gaps in government policy. You know that government is always responsible for coming up with laws and making the laws for the people. And if there is a gap, if they lack in certain areas, then definitely that gap can be filled through a private members bill. For example, the right to disconnect bill, which was actually introduced in 2019, and they proposed a legal protection for employees from after hours work communication. So you know that kind of a system is actually existing in our country, where after the working hours also you will get a lot of official communication. You have to be a part of that working process, etc. So this particular bill, which actually gives a legal protection from such kind of communication after the working hours. So that was an innovative idea. So that is the policy innovation. The second one is the reform potential. Reform potential. They help raise debates on outdated laws or new social concerns. Okay, so whatever new things which are going to happen, whatever new things are needed for our society, which will be coming in the private members bill, which will be there in the private members bill. The rights of transgender persons bill 2014 is an example. A private members bill paved the way for the government's own transgender rights legislation. Okay, so it's very important. All these kinds of private members bill, they have an advantage. Okay, whenever the government is actually missing certain things, those missing gaps can be filled by the private member bill. Then independent expression. So that is another important area where the MPs, the member of parliament, can present their views without party whip restrictions under the 10th schedule, strengthening the democratic debate. Very important. You know that a person who is actually elected from a particular political party, and they have to obey certain policies of the political party. We call it as the party whip. And there is actually a protection from the party whip in this kind of a bill, that is the private members bill, because the MPs can present their views without party whip. Then the checks and balance. These bills act as an instrument for MPs to question and challenge government policies by offering alternative solutions. So when there is a government existing, when they are coming up with new policies and laws for the people, and if there is a gap, if there is a criticism for that, if there is a challenge is there, then definitely they can come up with some alternative solutions through the private members bill. Okay, so these are the advantages or the significance of a private member bill. You need to understand it. Now let us understand why there is a decline or why there is a decrease in the number of the private members bill in the parliament. Why there is a decrease? So basically, the disruptions in the parliament. Disruptions means there are a lot of conflicts going on in the parliament. People protest in the parliament against certain bills, certain laws, certain decisions, etc. So the frequent adjournments and disorderly proceedings limit time for the private members bill. So you know that we have allocated some time for the private members bill, and because of these disruptions, we won't be able to allocate that time for the private members bill. For example, the 17th Lok Sabha, that is from 2019 to 2024, you could see that 729 PMBs were introduced in the Lok Sabha and 705 in the Rajya Sabha, but only 2 and 14 respectively were discussed. So then you can understand the problem. Okay, because of this problem, they are not able to take that in for discussion. So the second one is the procedural delay. With only 2 to 3 hours a week allotted, it often takes years for a PMB to be taken up. Very important, no? Because very small time. You know the number of members in the parliament, in the Lok Sabha and also in the Rajya Sabha. If everybody has to speak on that particular bill, no, then definitely it is going to take a lot of time. But we are only allocating 2 to 3 hours for this particular bill, and that is one reason. The speaker or the chairman also has discretionary power to admit or reject these bills, sometimes influenced by political factors also. So basically, sometimes they won't take it into consideration. Okay, so these are certain challenges related to the private members bill. Then resource limitation. It's a very important component. Resource limitation. The private members lack dedicated research support and drafting expertise available to the government. So basically, you know that in a government, if a government has to frame a particular policy, Many departments will be working on that. Many employees will be working on that. I mean, civil service officers will be working on that. Political, I mean, analysts will be working on that. Then the clerical staffs will be working on that. So many people will be engaged in that particular process itself. It includes the survey, it includes the research work, and every work is actually involved, right? So such a work is actually lacking for a private members bill. Resource lacking. Okay, or the resource limitation is one another major issue. Then low success rate. You know that government is always there to give something for the people there. Do you think government or the politicians will allow certain other kinds of reforms from some other people who are not ministers or who are not part of the ministry or the government? So there is a difficulty in that actually. So that is the low success rate. The poor track record discourages effort. Only 14 PMBs have ever become low. The last one passed in the 1970s. So very important. The last PMB was passed in 1970 only, which means it's more than 50 years we passed, and we couldn't even see a success rate for a particular PMB in these I mean sessions, the parliament sessions. Then lack of political will. The government businesses takes precedence, often pushing the PMBs to sidelines. So basically, always the first preference will be going for the government decisions, and due to that, then they won't be getting enough time for the presentation of such kinds of private members bill. So these are some of the reasons why the number of private members bill is actually declining. Okay, or the number of bills introduced in the parliament is decreasing. Okay, it's very important to understand about it. So what is the way forward for such bills, the private members bill? How can we protect this particular procedure in the parliament? So the first one is streamlined procedures. One is fix uninterrupted time slots for the private members bill debates and introduce digital tracking to ensure regular discussion. Amend parliamentary rules to protect this time from being overridden by the government business. So basically, there is a chance that this time will be overridden by the government business because there is lack of time. Okay, and or there are disruptions going on in the house. So most probably they will actually take that time. So it should not happen. There should be proper procedures for that. Parliamentary rule should be amended for that. Okay, that is one thing. Streamlining the procedures. Research support. Create a dedicated legislative research unit similar to the UK's Public Bill Committee to assist MPs in drafting and analysis. I told you, no, like there is a difficulty. There is a difficulty in finding the right resources. There is limited resources available. Number of people are less. The number of resources or the raw materials are less. So to find a proper mechanism for that, that is the research support we are actually talking about here. Then the institutional mechanism. Form a parliamentary review committee to screen the private members bill for quality, relevance, and constitutionality and prioritize them based on the public importance and cross-party consensus. So a proper review should be there. A proper review committee should be there so that they can actually take care of assessing its quality, relevance, and constitutionality. And based on the priority basis, they can actually give time slots for their discussion. So that is very important. Institutional mechanism is needed, and a 10-minute role model, which is actually adopted in the UK. Adopted the UK's format, allowing MPs to introduce brief, focused bills through short speeches, promoting faster consideration of new ideas. Basically, a very short time will be given for the MPs to come up with the new ideas, so that we are actually inviting certain ideas, inviting innovation in the parliament. So these are some of the ways in which you can actually improve the number of private members bill and their the chances of getting passed in the parliament. So it's very important to have private members bill because we discussed about the significance of it, right? So this is about the private members bill, and along with that you should also understand about how the bill is actually passed in the parliament, what is the lawmaking process in the parliament. So these should also be understood, and on the other hand you should also understand about the constitutional support which is actually given for the lawmaking process in our country, especially the articles you need to remember, because those things can be asked in the UPSC prelims and also in the mains examination.